You're watching the 2025 Heritage Interview Series at the American Association for Public Opinion Research. I'm Mandy Sha. Today, we are speaking with Tim Johnson. Tim Johnson is an honoree of the APOR Award for Exceptionally Distinguished Achievement. A past president of American, World, and Midwest Associations for Public Opinion Research, and Professor Emeritus at the University of Illinois at Chicago, celebrated for his scholarship in social epidemiology, survey methodology, and cross-cultural research. He is also a fellow at the American Statistical Association. Let's welcome Tim Johnson.
Hello, Mandy.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You being a past president of American and World Associations for Public Opinion Research. APOR and WAPOR share similar values and serve geographically different members. How have APOR and WAPOR stayed the same or changed over the years?
Well, Mandy, as you know, APOR and WAPOR were sister organizations, both baby boomer children of that came out of World War II, being formed between 1947 and 1949. They remained twins for much of their professional existence, meeting together every other year over the first 50 or 60 years of their existence. WAPOR took place in the United States jointly with APOR 25, 30 times during that time period. They had an opportunity to grow up together, to share the development of the methods of our profession and exchange ideas. And so they developed identities that for many, many years were very similar to one another. Over time, WAPOR has expanded, taken on a much greater international role in parts of the world that traditionally did not have many members, in Africa, in South and East Asia, also in Australia. And as a consequence, the two associations to some extent have grown apart only because WAPOR has felt the need to expand the number of locations where it meets in order to better serve its membership. If they're not siblings anymore, they're still cousins and have a lot in common, and we're seeing that this year at the first joint conference that APOR and WAPOR have held together in the United States in about a decade. The COVID pandemic stunted our relationship a little bit, and both associations had to go online for a period of time, including when you were conference chair. You had to lead us through the pandemic meeting online. And so we were isolated from one another for a couple of years there, but it feels so good to see the two associations back together again here this year.
According to Wikipedia, you're known for your association leadership. How important is association leadership to you as a scholar and a leader?
Well, Mandy, it's very important for all investigators and academics to consider providing leadership to their professional associations. We rely on these associations so much for exchange of knowledge, exchange of ideas, and for camaraderie. I think it's very important for scholarship to be engaged in professional associations where we have an opportunity to share our knowledge and exchange ideas with other scholars and other researchers. It's been very important to me. I always looked up to the leadership of APOR and to our sister organizations. And when I got to a certain point in my career and the opportunity presented itself to assume a leadership position, I was very pleased to accept that responsibility. It requires quite a bit of time and effort and great responsibility to help lead these professional associations, but it's also very rewarding. I've made many, many additional friends and contacts working in the professional associations, and it's been very rewarding. And I'd like to think it's absolutely essential for the well-being of the associations that members who are committed to the association be willing to invest the time to stand up and provide leadership.
You also served as president of the Midwest Association for Public Opinion Research, MAPOR, which is a regional chapter of APOR. And you were later named fellow by MAPOR. What motivated you to get involved in a regional chapter and help them grow?
I attended MAPOR before I presented papers at APOR. And myself, like many young scholars, it's difficult to obtain funding to travel to research conferences, and regional conferences often are more cost effective and easier to participate in. And that was the case with MAPOR. I can recall a scholar that I worked with at the University of Kentucky when I was still in graduate school recommending that I participate in MAPOR. And I made my first presentation there, and it gave me some experience and an opportunity for some really quality feedback from new colleagues at MAPOR, who then encouraged me to take the next step and to begin more active participation in APOR, even though it was still very expensive and with small children at home, more of a challenge to travel to some of the APOR conferences. So my involvement with MAPOR actually predates my involvement with APOR to a large extent.
Many people would say that you have been the face of APOR's Transparency Initiative, or we call TI. Can you talk about TI's open science approach and what it's designed to accomplish?
So the TI does date back until 2010 at an APOR conference where our president at that time, Peter Miller, outlined his concept of a transparency initiative that he felt would be essential for maintaining the credibility of the research that we do. I was asked by his successor as president, Paul Lavrakis, to lead a committee, we called it the Transparency Initiative Coordinating Committee, to operationalize Peter's concept and organize a transparency initiative so that the many APOR member organizations who had expressed support for Peter's initiative would have an opportunity to put their money where their mouth was and to join the Transparency Initiative and make the pledge to report on a regular basis the methodological details of the research that they reported publicly. In terms of your question about open science, Mandy, Transparency Initiative in some ways was a little bit ahead of its time, at least in our field, in its focus on being as open with the reporting methodological details, sample sizes and question wording and so forth, that were not being routinely disclosed by individual and member organizations in NAPOR. I looked today at some of the open science requirements for the pre-registration experiment websites that are proliferating these days. And the types of methodological disclosures that they require be reported actually in advance of data collection look very, very similar to the professional standards data elements that APOR and the Transparency Initiative require be reported of our studies. So in some ways, the Transparency Initiative was a little bit ahead of its time in terms of its emphasis on open science.
I served on the Transparency Initiative Committee during its early stages of development. It's gratifying to see that in 2025, TI now has more than 100 members and is celebrating its 10th anniversary.
We're, I guess, well aware of some of the limitations of the Transparency Initiative. It is largely only speaking, it's professionals, scientists speaking to one another, disclosing their methodological details to one another for purposes of peer review and open critique, and also so that others have an ability to replicate research if they so desire. But the public remains largely unaware of this work and actually not well educated regarding the methodological details that are necessary to really evaluate the quality of public opinion research. which they are nonetheless evaluating based upon the degree, these horse race questions in public opinion polls around presidential elections, and how close single items come to predicting outcomes of the elections. And these surveys are never meant to actually predict outcomes to begin with, but that's how they're being evaluated. And suddenly we have an entire generation of public experts regarding public opinion polls who really don't have any formal training or education in terms of how to interpret these various methodological aspects of the studies. So what we need to do, and where I hope the Transparency Initiative is moving in the future, is towards efforts to refocus our efforts in terms of educating and reporting information that will be useful to the public and packaged in a format that is most digestible and understandable to the general public. So although we do have an open science approach, it's open science only in terms, I feel, currently of sharing information with other scientists. We need to find appropriate strategies for communicating that information effectively to the general public so that they can be more efficient consumers of the data that we provide.
In your April presidential address in 2018, you pointed out sociological, technological, and political pressures to delegitimize survey research, and you attributed this perfect storm to a lack of trust in statistics and declining response rates.
This is one of our ongoing challenges. The importance of communicating to the public that serious standards do exist for the conduct of credible survey and public opinion research. Clearly, APOR has been working for some time to confront some of the wicked problems that collectively lead to the delegitimation of our work. But few of us are under any illusion that these various activities alone are going to solve our legitimacy issue. But I am hopeful that they will serve as platforms from which we can continue launching action-oriented initiatives that openly and transparently address and attempt to manage some very legitimate public concerns about our work. We don't have all the answers, but I do believe there are three things that will be needed to help us effectively confront these challenges. The first is collective action. The second is public education. And the third is a willingness to engage critics with factual information.
Today, we are still dealing with these wicked problems. Have the solutions evolved?
Well, Mandy, if anything, it's become more complicated since that address, 7 years ago? That's hard to believe. Problems are greater than they were. I heard a quote from a former student just a day or so ago that on social media today, any open public discussion within 5 to 10 minutes will be invaded by Russian bots who will try to upend the conversation. The social discourse has become very complicated. It's become even worse than what we considered back then.
It sounds like the role of APOR and WAPOR is ever important in the field of public opinion research. Would you agree with that statement?
I certainly would, Mandy. I don't want to over-dramatize some of the challenges that we face in our field, but it's very important that we take them seriously and look for practical solutions that are respectful in terms of public discourse and also in terms of assisting the public in properly using the information and the knowledge that's produced by our industry.
From my perspective, I also see value in expanding the reach of science communication, and associations like APOR and WAPOR have an established communications infrastructure, and I see that bringing great value to members, researchers, and research leaders.
I agree, Mandy. It's really up to our professional associations to stand up and be counted and to help lead the counter-arguments against some of these attempts at delegitimizing the work and the research that we do.
Looking at your publications, you have published more than 80 peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, and books related to health behaviors of marginalized populations, survey measurement, and non-response errors, and cross-cultural research, including an APOR Book Award for survey methods in multinational, multi-regional, and multicultural contexts. How did you manage to become a thought leader in 3 disciplines: social epidemiology, cross-cultural research, and survey methodology? Or are they intrinsically connected?
Well, Mandy, I was attracted into each of these fields independently, but I take a step back and look, and it's so obvious how they're interconnected with one another. But it was just going back to some of our prior conversation. I could recall very clearly mentors who encouraged me to focus on survey methodology. It was Dr. Jim Hoagland, a sociologist at the University of Kentucky, who encouraged me to begin writing up experiments that I had conducted with our omnibus survey for possible publication. It was another professor at UK, Dr. Thomas Garrity of behavioral science, who encouraged my what became a real passion for research in social epidemiology, primarily relying on survey methods to do that work. I came to cross-cultural methodology kind of fortuitously. There was a funding opportunity from the National Center for Health Statistics right after I had joined the survey research laboratory at the University of Illinois in Chicago. And all of the other senior staff were too busy at that time to work on that grant proposal. And so they said, Tim, you work on it. And I found it extremely fascinating, a problem that I really had not dealt much with previously. But as it turned out, we were successful in obtaining that funding and conducting that research, and that sparked a real interest in cross-cultural methodology that was really ignited shortly thereafter by a visit to the United States from Dr. Janet Harkness and Peter Moeller at Zuma at the University of Mannheim in Germany, who had a similar interest, and we began a long-term collaboration that gave me an opportunity for the types of international collaborations that I never had previously, and an opportunity to develop ideas to attack problems I was not even aware of when I first started conducting research in survey methodology.
Tim, I very much enjoyed your story about stepping up when no one else had the time, and that launched a new career in cross-cultural research for you. Would you say that it's important for early and mid-career professionals to seize opportunity when they see an opportunity?
I certainly agree with that. It never hurts to volunteer, and it never hurts to say yes when an opportunity presents itself, even if it requires extra time. I guess I was fortunate. All the years that I was at the University of Illinois, I took the commuter trains into the office from my home in Glen Ellen, but that gave me about an hour twice a day coming and going to work on the train, and many of the papers that you mentioned were written on those train rides over the decades. And so I tried to put the time to good use and do it efficiently so it would not interfere. When I got home, I had a young family, and they require and deserve my undivided attention once I get home. So I tried to be as efficient as possible at work and traveling to work. But at the same time, you do have to recognize opportunities and step up, both for the good of the organization that you represent, as well as your own personal development, and put in the effort that's necessary to address those challenges.
It sounds like being intentional with your time and also with the support from your family were important factors to your success.
They both made a world of difference for me.
APOR can be such a valuable resource for those who seek mentoring. What would be your advice for early and mid-career professionals who want to use APOR as a resource to seek more mentoring?
My advice would be do not be shy. Reach out to senior colleagues for help. 9 times out of 10, you'll be greeted warmly and assistance will be provided. So I would encourage younger colleagues to get over their natural shyness and don't be afraid to reach out for help because you'll get it.
Do they come up to you and say, introduce themselves?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they do. It's happened 3 or 4 times today.
Hi, I'm Mandy Sha. It's
So
very
nice to meet you.
A firm handshake and a smile. Was there any other information they should mention?
I need your help.
Let's demonstrate that again. Hi, I am Mandy Sha. Nice to meet you. May I ask for some help?
Absolutely. What can I help you with?
Tim, around the summer of 2018, you and I shared a nice meal at Chicago's Greektown. At that time, I was experiencing some professional setbacks. And you told me, Mandy, just keep doing what you do so well. And one day, you're going to look back and you won't even remember any of these setbacks because you'll be so busy fielding requests. And today, I look back, my cup is overflown, and I'm grateful. Tim, you were so right. What made you decide to encourage me and others like me?
Well, Mandy, I have fond memories of our lunch. I believe it was our Topolis in Greektown.
That's right.
It was a summer day. I take mentoring very seriously, and we had known one another from APOR, from MAPOR, CSDI also, I believe.
That's right.
It was something important to me to meet with you, and we did have a long discussion, and I recall that not too long thereafter, you were the conference chair at APOR,
Yes,
and
I was.
you definitely had your hands full. Mentoring students and mentoring colleagues, young colleagues in particular, is very, very important. I was mentored, and you mentioned my work in social epidemiology and survey methodology and cross-cultural research, and I can remember very clearly senior colleagues who encouraged me to focus on my passion in each of those fields. There were 2 people that really influenced my professional career when I joined the Survey Research Laboratory in Chicago, and those were Dick Warnicki, who actually hired me. He was director then at the Survey Lab, and Seymour Subban, who was the deputy director, but located in our office on the Urbana-Champaign campus. During the 1990s, one of the most incredible learning experiences of my life was the opportunity to work on a day-to-day basis with both Dick and Seymour in terms of collaborations on a number of different research studies that we were engaged in. So in some ways, it's giving it forward, as they say, is each generation has a moral responsibility to encourage the next generation to push things forward, to push our knowledge forward, and to do good.
Thank you, Tim, again. And on behalf of the many people that you've touched, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mandy.
Keep watching Personal Stories about Dick Warnicki and Seymour Sudman. This has been the 2025 Heritage Interview Series at the American Association for Public Opinion Research.
As I mentioned, Dick hired me. I can still remember the entire visit to the Chicago campus when I was being interviewed, and even the restaurant that he took me to for dinner, the Berghoff German restaurant, and down in the Loop. It's still there. I still think of that first meeting with Dick every time I walk past that restaurant, and our discussion of measurement errors when collecting health survey questions about chronic health conditions versus acute health conditions. Uh, I learned much more at that time about Dick's passion for cancer control research. And I said it back then, I said it for many years. Dick's goal was to be there when they discovered the cure for cancer. And he was absolutely relentless. The entire 30 plus 33, I think, years that I knew Dick, he was focused singularly on understanding the social origins of cancer and trying to address them any way he could. And he really focused on disadvantaged minority populations that were under represented in cancer control research and were less likely to benefit from the latest innovations in cancer control and treatment. And that was Dick's mission to focus on that. He was a great inspiration to me. And as I had mentioned earlier, I studied with Tom Garrity social epidemiology down at the University of Kentucky while I was still in graduate school. And so that was a natural link. I think that's probably what interested Dick in me joining the lab to begin with. And it was funny. They actually knew each other. Tom Garrity, my one of my mentors in Kentucky, had graduated from Duke University. And when I took the job in Chicago, I remember Tom telling me that when he was a first year graduate student, there was this senior graduate student named Dick Warnicki in the same sociology program at Duke. And he was just in awe of Dick Warnicki and all of the projects and all of the things that he was flying around doing as he was wrapping up his graduate studies there. So it was a real privilege to have worked with both of them. And uh, Dick just was really amazing in so many different ways. He was also very active in APOR. He managed the Student Paper Awards for a number of years, and I can recall that because he always tagged me to help review some of the papers each year that he was managing that program. Dick and I both were commuters into the Chicago office. Dick took the North Line down from Winnetka, and I took the West Line from Glen Ellen. But we converged within 2 or 3 minutes of one another at the Ogilvy Train Center in Chicago, and met up and walked to the office every morning. Initiating our conversations on various research projects and research ideas. And we finished up those conversations at the end of the day, walking back to the train station more often than not. And uh, I think that what I learned most from Dick over the years that we collaborated was that he was the master of writing grants, of bringing in federal research dollars for his health research, and all of which involved survey methods. And I learned how to write grants from Dick, and it served me well when I became director of the lab. But that was really important. And Dick continued to provide me with advice and mentoring well into his early 80s, up until just about that we were collaborating on projects right up until his unfortunate passing. Dick had a tremendous impact on my professional career and my personal life. And I can say the same for Seymour, who absolutely warmly welcomed me when I joined the survey laboratory. Even though I was in a different office, we had lots of interaction right off the bat. When I began working, I learned, I thought I knew a lot about survey sampling from my time in Kentucky, but watching the master at work was truly illuminating. How he managed survey samples and did problem uh, solving with sample frames and so forth. Taught me lessons that I applied throughout my career. Uh, but I also learned about cognitive interviewing and social cognition and responding to survey uh, questions primarily from Seymour. before arriving in Chicago during graduate school, I was certainly familiar with Seymour's classic book, Response Effects and Surveys, that he had written with his colleague Norman Bradburn, uh, which taught me about the total survey error design before that term, that label actually became popular. They had already outlined much of what was later became known as total survey error in that 1974 volume of theirs. And of course, I am also a student of survey methodology and had read several of the other Subman and Bradburn or Bradburn and Sudman texts on survey methodology over the years. So it was really an honor to be able to work with Seymour as well. Uh, and he was not just a scholar, he was a tremendous scholar, but he also was intimately involved in the actual applied day-to-day survey operations at the Survey Research Laboratory, hence his concern with sample frames and so forth. He was interested in the nuts and bolts and always had an opinion to share regarding survey operations and progress on various grants as we proceeded through some of our more important studies. And he often traveled to Chicago, particularly when we were working on some of our collaborating, Dick and Seymour and I, and Diana Rourke, who was assistant director down on the Urbana campus when we worked on several funded studies regarding cancer control. Seymour would come up to Chicago. I learned how to do cognitive interviews by watching Seymour do them. He was not afraid to get his hands dirty and to jump in there and do the interviews himself, and the same for moderating focus groups. I got to watch the master in action, collecting qualitative data firsthand. So that was also very influential in terms of my professional development to learn from Seymour. About the year 2000, Seymour was planning to retire. He took me aside during, I think I was actually on the Urbana campus, and he took me aside. It was early spring of 2000, and he told me that he was going to be retiring in June, but not to worry because that just meant that there would be more time for him to spend at the survey lab. He was retiring from his work in business as a faculty member in business administration, but his heart was in survey research and SRL, and that he would just be there more time than he had been previously. And of course, shortly thereafter, Seymour suffered that terrible stroke and passed away a few weeks later, and so that never happened. Seymour was working simultaneously on at least four books that we know of at the time of his passing, and to this day, I still wonder how much additional knowledge uh, he had to contribute to the field that we lost when he suffered that unfortunate stroke. These were men who really influenced my work at the Survey Research Laboratory and welcomed me with open arms onto the team. And we worked together, collaborated on countless studies throughout the 1990s that were really important to me and which I'll never forget.